Jeff, you had on your top 100 list Shadur Sanders in the 30s. And boy, oh boy, are there some rumors and lips a flapping about him over the past 48 hours. Where do you think, what do you think his true value is? And what from all these rumors should we decipher when it comes to the draft tomorrow for Shadur?
Yeah, DMAC, it's the lying season, as I call it. So, I mean, a lot of times you got to put rumors. I always tell folks it's really the sources you believe in and trust and go from there. But who's reporting it and all of that. I think, I've spent a lot of time evaluating the quarterbacks on this board. I think Shadur is QB2 in this draft. I think he's a pretty sturdy QB2. I think he could be a really productive starter in the league. The issues aren't all the stupid things you hear, I think. I don't think it's his how he approaches people and the interviews and all of that. I've heard nothing but the vast majority has been really productive, good things about those interactions with him, with teams. I think it's just a fact he's undersized and is not considered a great athlete at the position, but he's got a great brain. He processes well, and he's really good in big moments. So I think with a nice ramp up to be a starter, he could be a really productive guy in the league in the right hands. If I'm Shadur, I've said, you guys know, I'd want to come down the board and go to a better team. That's just what I think the better situation for him is. Not come in and save our failing franchise and a coach in trouble. I don't think that's the situation for him. But I have a hard time believing he would go too deep into the second, even if he somehow isn't picked in the first round.
Yeah, that seems insane to me. I mean, if he's the second quarterback, he's the second quarterback, and somebody's going to need a quarterback. Yeah. So I guess you ask yourself who's got what to gain with all these stories that are coming out, and why right now. I mean, yesterday it was just like a barrage of just pretty insane stuff that was coming out about, can I see that people think he's entitled? Okay, sure, I could see it. Can I see that people got these questions? But then you just ask yourself, who's got what to gain? And I don't know, Jeff. I mean, how real are these games that are played? Do teams I hate to say the Steelers because I don't know anything, but just in theory, say the Steelers like Shadur Sanders. Are there actual games played like this where teams like the Steelers, in theory, would put out this bad information in hopes that he does fall?
Yeah, I mean, Tyler, I would say having covered the Steelers and know a lot of people in the building, still, they don't do that, but it is done in the league. There's no question. I mean, there's no question. Some people would do that. I think personally, that's a pretty big jump over the unethical line to disparage a young guy because, you've got these other motives. But, hey, that's an ethics show we could do later probably. But it is done. Almost anything is done by somebody. It's just it isn't like pervasive or anything, but there are people out there who aren't above trying to get things to fall their way in any round, let alone the first. But, the problem is I think most consumers of draft content haven't accepted the biggest fact of this draft, and that it is not a good first round. And we talk about mostly publicly in any coverage of the draft is the first round. So you're stuck with a very uncertain environment and people trying to fill the information gap in what is not a great first round. I mean, I've talked to somebody from every team in the league, and there's anywhere from 14 to 19 or 20 first round grades this year. That's low. And that's what's affecting what you're hearing, because there is so much uncertainty about what 14 or 15 players teams really like, because they're not the same guys.
So if it is not a strong first round, And there were reports over the last couple days that I don't know how serious to take him, that the Broncos are very interested in moving up. If it's not a great first round, in your mind, would that make it more likely to move up or to move back? Because I guess I could see the argument either way. There's not enough guys. We got to go get them. There's nobody we like. We got to move back.
Yeah, Tyler, I think the issue is moving up is it's going to cost you more on the old draft value chart than it would most years, because the people with those picks, it has a higher value in this first round. If you're in the upper half of the first round, you're getting players that are graded pretty significantly better than the bottom half of the first round. And the real meat of the draft is 2 through 5. It's a really good draft, rounds 2 through 5. So moving up will cost you a lot, and you might have to give up picks in the 2nd to 5th rounds this year, where the real meat of this draft is. So I think moving up, you better be sure you're going to get the guy you really want, because people are going to ask you more than those picks are worth on the value chart.
Give me a couple guys that would be worth it, in your opinion.
For them, you guys know where I stand. I think both tight ends are worth moving up for.
Okay.
I think the running back certainly is worth moving up for, but
when you say that, do you mean Genty and Hampton, or just Genty?
Just Genty.
Just Genty. Okay.
I don't think Hampton's a first rounder, but that's my grades.
Okay.
Take it for what you will. I think Henderson is a better grade on my board than Hampton, but Warren and Loveland both worth it. At need positions for the Broncos, they can get a receiver where they are on this board, but the tight ends and the running back, you're going to have to move for. The problem is everybody likes the tight ends and the running back. So there's a lot of comp for those guys, because again, on a thin board, those are 3 walk-in starters on offense.
We just had Terrence Ferguson here in studio, which was awesome.
He did great. I think people should know he did as much as you can do to help your draft stock from the end of the season to the draft. He really did well with people, and I hope he goes someplace cool, because I think he did a great job.
Well, he is in your top 100, correct? I think he's stuck in there.
I like him as a player. Yeah, I mean, everybody says, "Oh, he's not a great blocker." I don't care. Catch the ball. Blocking, they can help him with that. A lot of it is scheme at Oregon. None of their tight ends have been great blockers. None of their receivers are great blockers. It's just the scheme they run. I don't hold him responsible for that.
Sell me a pin on why it makes sense to draft a defensive tackle in the first round.
Because if he's the best guy on your board, you better do it.
Boring. Give me a better. Sell it better.
I'm not in the business of selling, Tyler. That's your gig. I just tell it.
Besides Walter Nolan, is there somebody else that the Broncos could reasonably consider a defensive tackle in the first round?
Okay. I love Walter Nolan more than everybody. He's like number 4 on my board. I love that guy. I think he's spectacular. But no, I think I think Nolan is a good pick. I know there's some concerns about the Harmon's medicals, but I think he's worth where the Broncos are picking. Those are walk-in players for a defense that could use guys up front. But I have a really, really hard time to watch the Broncos spend their free agency money the way they did and believe they're going to pull a defensive player off the board in the first round.
It feels weird, yeah.
I think that's where the trouble is. That's where the value is going to be. Wide receiver and likely defensive players will likely be where the value is when they pick.
Do you buy the reports over the last few days about the Broncos wanting to be aggressive, moving up in the first round?
I buy everything, Tyler. I think it's underestimated overall in draft coverage how much teams talk to each other right now. Like I see everybody running stories about, Cleveland and New York talking to people about their picks. Well, yeah, everyone talks to everyone about this is where you get it squared away to know who you're going to call on the clock. This is where GMs make the rounds to all the other teams to see where, when would you be willing to trade? When, who's on the trading potential? Would you even consider trading that pick? Those are all the discussions that are being had right now. So yeah, if teams aren't talking to everybody else, it's malpractice.
Let's go for deeper value later round picks. Specifically, I'll start with Tez Johnson. The likelihood that he could go, say, in the 6th round to the Broncos.
Yeah, he may even go before that. I mean,
really,
he's a love-hate player among scouts. There's no middle ground. People either really adore him and believe he will get open no matter how small he is because his route running skills are elite.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great route runner. The issue is he's really small, one of the smallest players on the board, and he didn't run great in the pre-draft time, but he sure looked good at the Senior Bowl, and that always carries a lot of weight this time of year. But I think he's a day 3, but I think he could go a little earlier than the 6, maybe, if the board falls right.
I got a couple others. Most undervalued pickup on your draft board, most overvalued player on your draft board.
Most overvalued?
Yeah, well, the guy, it wouldn't be on your draft board. Let me put this a different way. The guy you think who's getting the most hype, who's likely to go the highest, that just ain't worth it. Who's that?
I don't know if he's not worth it. He's a guy I have a lot of questions about. James Pierce, the edge rusher from Tennessee.
He's got tons of hype. Yes.
Well, it makes me wary when you're that good and your coaches suddenly decide not to start you in games.
Okay.
That makes me think there's something going on, away from the defense to make that happen. So if I was a team, I'd really want to dive into that. I know what I've been told, and I just think that if I'm a team, I want to know what's going on there.
All right, best potential steal then in the draft. Staying a little bit more positive here.
Yeah, no, I love Travion Henderson probably more than most.
2nd round, 3rd round.
I put a high 2 grade on him, Tyler, for whatever that's worth. But I did it. I really like the safety from Texas, Makuba.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a really undervalued player, and I always put a player at number 100 that I value higher, and I like Nick Nash, the wide receiver from San Jose State.
Will you be surprised if Shedeur drops to 21 to the Steelers?
I won't be surprised. If I'm Shedeur, I'm ecstatic if that happens. I just can't say that enough. And I feel bad for the guy. It's not his fault. His dad's famous, and guys are, players are getting paid in college football right now. Caleb Williams made $11 million last year before he became a pro. Carson Beck has a Mercedes and a Bentley, and he's still in school. So let's not get all wrapped up about who's entitled and what. I mean, it's the way of the world. You got sometimes the draft is a bunch of old people talking about young people, and you really got to sift through it.
Okay. Any other last minute pieces on anything we haven't asked you about?
What about the local kids here?
Sure. Good one.
Jimmy Horn, Will Shepard, Horton out of CSU. Where are you out on those guys?
I think that their trouble is it's a really deep position. So, they could get pushed down the board and be graded a full round or 2 rounds above where they're actually picked. But I thought Will Shepard had the best pro day of anybody at CU that day. He was spectacular. And you want to know how to do a pro day, that's how to do a pro day.
How about Gunnar Helm real quick before we're out the door here? What do you
people really like him because that's, especially your offenses that want an inline tight end as part of the job description. They don't, offenses that don't just want the guy to line up in the slot or out wide. If you want an inline guy, those teams really like him.
Jeff, I'm trying to figure out how the Broncos can screw this one up, and I'm lost. There seems to be so many good options for where they're at and what they can do. The depth seems to be right for positions of need. It really feels like they're going to nail this one.
Well, they need to. I mean, if you're going to be good in this league, we all love free agency because we know the names. But if you're really going to be good year after year after year, you got to ace April, and that's just a fact. I've said, I keep coming back to the one thing Sean Payton said when we all sat in with him last week that was of real importance. You don't pass on Crystal because you need a blender. And if they stick to that, that means best available. And that's how you should always draft. Always.
And draft night in the lobby. Did I hear that right?
Oh yeah. No, it's the COVID lobby system. That's where we were during COVID. So welcome to the lobby.
Yeah. If people don't know, there's massive construction going on. So they are having the draft night in the lobby of the building, from what I understand.
But I was over there the other day. I had to tape some TV stuff for ESPN, and the beams are up.
Wow.
On the new facility. So it's they're making progress.
That's awesome. All right, Jeff. Hey, all that work. We know how much